Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Jenna came out of work after a busy day and finally exhaled. The boss was as angry as ever today, scolding her as best he could, threatening that she might soon find herself on the street if she didn't learn how to sell their products. She took a cup of coffee from the vending machine and wandered toward the subway, trying to get away from the negativity. Thoughts wandered in her head unhappy. I've only been working for 6 months, and I've already received a scolding. How can I increase these sales when the country is in crisis and no one wants to take the damn vacuum cleaner? And I don't want to go home. No one is waiting for me there. No one needs me in this life. The girl went down to the crossing, and again she saw the same beggar woman. It was a woman in her 40s who looked like a gypsy. Black hair, dark eyes, dressed in a strange long robe and a shabby jacket. She was holding a child in her arms, a boy about 3 or 4 years old in a dirty overalls, and he was sleeping all the time. The woman rocked him and begged alms in a pitiful voice. "Give a hand, good people. There's nothing to feed the baby. He's hungry." Jenna tossed her change into the tin each time and paused for a few seconds, trying to get a better look at the baby. She couldn't tell if it was a doll or a real live baby. And if so, why did he sleep all the time? He was not breastfed, right? Was he drugged or something? Today the boy's hat was pulled up, and Jenna got a good look at the curly blonde hair and the interesting mole on his neck, shaped like a seashell. But the gypsy girl immediately looked at her angrily and began muttering something in her language and covering the baby's face with her hands. Jenna even felt uncomfortable, and she tried to leave quickly. But even at home, even into the night, that poor sleeping boy would not leave her mind. Who was he? Where had the dark-haired gypsy come from? She looked nothing like his mother. The poor boy, just as she had been, had found himself in the hands of strangers, and no one wanted him at all. Jenna went to the mirror and examined herself. If I turned sideways, she had a very pretty face, fresh skin, long eyelashes, and dimples on her cheeks. But as soon as I turned the other way, there was a freak. Yeah, the freak with the burn scar across his cheek. It made her face look a little twisted and gave a slightly frightening impression. No matter how much she tried to cover it up with makeup, it was all in vain. The skin was damaged too deeply. The girl recoiled from the mirror and threw it to the floor in her heart. It shattered into 100 pieces, and she sobbed bitterly, replaying the fragments of her life and the unfortunate accident that had divided her life into before and after. Jenna's mother died in childbirth, so she only saw her in family photos. She was raised by her father alone. The man's name was Kevin, and he was a hard worker and a foreman in the aviation industry. Jenna loved her daddy madly. She remembered for the rest of her life his big, hard, warm hands that lifted her so high that it was scary, held her close to him, and did not let her go for a long time. The girl saw how difficult it was for her father, how he was exhausted and torn between caring for her and work, and tried not to be a miser and obey him in everything. She was always the last one in kindergarten, but she never cried, just waited patiently. And when at last her favorite daddy came into the playroom, she jumped on his neck with a squeal of happiness. And how much pride and happiness she had when her daddy took her to first grade by the hand. He tied huge white bows for her himself, and he said, "So, Jenna, it's your first time in first grade. I can't even believe that you are such a grown-up, my sweetheart. Study well and don't be afraid of anyone. If anyone hurts you, I'll twist your head right off." And Jenna did her best. It was surprisingly easy for her to learn. She proudly brought her daddy A's in her diary, and he kissed her on the cheeks, stroked her on the head, and praised her. And on summer vacation, she and daddy went to the sea. It was such an experience. It seemed like dreams come true. Kevin got a trip to work for 10 whole days. At the store, we bought flippers and a mask, a swimsuit for our daughter, sunscreen, Panama hats, and caps. But the dream was never going to come true. Their tour bus had an accident one night. Gasoline leaked from the tank and instantly burst into flames. The door jammed from the force of the impact, and the passengers were trapped inside, like in a terrible trap. The father did not get confused. First broke the glass near his seat and jumped out of the bus, carrying his daughter away from the unfortunate place, and then went back to help the other passengers get out. The girl was crying and screaming, "Daddy, don't go in there. Please, I'm scared." But the man only encouraged her. Now, my daughter, be patient. Daddy, quickly, there and back. I can't leave people there, you know. Isn't it human? There are so many children there, like you. They want to live too, and they're scared too. Don't cry. He had more than 15 lives saved, including those of small children. Except he didn't have time to save himself because the burning bus exploded. The blast wave hit Jenna too, and the pellet hit her face, leaving her with an ugly scar across her cheek for life. But worst of all, she was orphaned forever. Daddy was posthumously awarded the Order of Courage, but what's the use if he's not around, and never will be? Jenna cried and screamed, and had almost no memory of her father's funeral. She was treated in the neurological ward and sent to an orphanage. There she became withdrawn at first, and even began to stutter. The children made fun of her, teased her about being ugly, and made scary faces at her. Jenna was malnourished all the time. She thought there was no place on earth scarier than this. She was used to the warmth of home and her father's love and affection, and she felt very sick and sad here. No one knows how all this would have ended if she had not been pitied by an elderly caregiver, Maria. She felt unspeakably sorry for this battered little girl with such intelligent and inquisitive eyes, who by all accounts was well-groomed and homely. It was she who found an approach to her and took her under her wing. A woman who taught music at an orphanage, and observing Jenna and her emotional state, decided to sign her up for swimming because she knew that it was relaxing and had a positive effect on the child's psyche. And so it did. The water had a miraculous effect on her, and Jenna became calmer and more confident. She began to make progress, swam faster than anyone else, learned breaststroke and crawl techniques, and participated in local competitions. Her stuttering went away on its own. She and Maria talked a lot. The girl shared her sorrows and troubles, her successes and achievements. The woman even wanted to adopt her, as she had a strong attachment to her soul, but she was refused. Because she was old, her salary was small, she had no husband, her housing was rented. But nevertheless, with her light hand, Jenna went from an ugly, battered duckling to a beautiful swan. She had long, gorgeous brown hair, a supple, athletic body, and a pretty face. But that awful scar spoiled everything, crossed it all out. Maria taught her to live with it as best she could and chanted it like a mantra. You're a beautiful girl. Love yourself. Don't pay attention to your flaw. You have many other virtues. You are sure to meet a good guy, and he will love you. You deserve it, my girl. Unfortunately, Jenna did not manage to make a career as an athlete, although she had all the prerequisites. Despite numerous awards and diplomas, she never made the national team. She was an orphan, had no protection, and had a frightening scar. Neither on TV nor in the newspaper could she be photographed. The girl was terribly upset, but her mentor supported her even here. After she left the orphanage, she helped her get a job as a manager at a small private firm through her acquaintances and got her a nice room in the dormitory. She persuaded Jenna to take a correspondence course in economics. She kept telling her that she shouldn't wear her diploma. It would come in handy. But unfortunately, Maria passed away 3 months ago. Her heart failed. Jenna was very sad and grieved for her. There was nobody to share good and bad things with. No one understood her like she did. She had no friends either because of the scar or because she was an orphan. Her colleagues at work treated her with a distinct coldness. Things were not easy on the personal front. While she was still an athlete, she met a boy, William. He too was from a poor family, raised by his grandmother alone. Outwardly, the guy was attractive, tall, athletic, with a stiff hedgehog and a strong-willed chin. Feelings arose between the young men, or rather, Jenna thought so sincerely. They met in the evenings, walking in the park, kissing. She often asked the boy how he felt about her disability, which was very important for her to know, but he only laughed and made jokes. "My darling, but you have an amazing figure. Don't worry about nothing." Soon he started coming to Jenna's house, and then he stayed the night, so their first intimacy happened. William was tender and affectionate, frantically whispering words of love and swearing fidelity to his bride. Jenna simply drowned in his arms and dissolved in the ocean of passion without a trace. The girl was happy. She hurried after work. She tried. She pampered her beloved with delicious dishes. She pleased him in everything. When she received her salary, she bought not herself, but her fiancé one thing and then another, starting with trendy headphones and ending with clothes. She made do with very little. A minimum of makeup and a couple of office dresses and suits with one pair of shoes. That's the whole closet. She hoped he would appreciate her care and warmth. She dreamed that soon she and William would be married and live as a close-knit family. The guy worked as a courier, earned a penny, and most of all dreamed of getting out of poverty, of becoming rich, was directly obsessed with it. But he had no intention of working too hard or slaving away for 12 hours at a time. He wanted wealth to come to him in some incomprehensible way. Jenna, however, did not share his views. She thought the main thing was love and trust, and that without money it was bearable. Not everything in their relationship was smooth. They rarely went out together. William somehow became cold to his fiancée, became rude to her, and sometimes made cruel jokes. He was literally starting to feel bad about everything. Jenna was really hurt by this, and they fought more and more often. She did not understand what was going on, but somehow in a woman's intuition she knew that her beloved had someone. His behavior and attitude toward her had changed drastically. She was no longer Goldie and sunshine, but suddenly became chicken and knave fool. Then one day Jenna came home and found a horrible picture. Her fiancé was packing his things and running around the room. The girl was taken aback and didn't understand anything. "William, what are you doing? Why are you packing? What's the matter, anyway?" He blurted out angrily in her face. "So you and I are breaking up. That's what happened. I met Cindy and I'm leaving you. She may be 10 years older, it doesn't matter to me. But she's very rich and has her own business. And what a car she has. She's got her own mansion in a bedroom community. And most importantly, she's crazy about me. Finally, I'll get out of this misery den." Tears spontaneously, involuntarily gushed from Jenna's eyes. "What about me? What about our love? I had hoped we were about to be married, and you. Without love, will you be happy with this Cindy? Does money mean everything to you?" The groom only muttered, "What do I need you for, orphan? And childless ugly. You'll never get pregnant. What will I see in my life with you? We'll live on potatoes from paycheck to paycheck. I don't want that kind of life. So I'm sorry." Jenna collapsed into a chair, covered her face with her hands, and burst into tears. She never uttered another word, only watched as her William sneakily escaped. It left an open wound in her heart. Since that day, the girl generally began to shun men. She realized that nothing good could come of them. Every day, she would go to an empty room where no one was waiting for her, warm her supper, and cry without sleep, so lonely despite the fact that she seemed to be 25, and everything was not so bad, but not much good either. And now all her thoughts were on that little boy from the subway crossing. Jenna had tormented herself all night thinking about him, and decided that tonight she would definitely go and ask the gypsy woman what her son's name was, and why he was sleeping. There had to be some explanation, right? So she did. She bought a bun, some candy, and juice after work, and from a distance she saw the familiar gypsy woman. She was still begging for alms, holding the boy in her arms, and he was still asleep. That was more than alarming. There was clearly something wrong with the child. The girl walked right up to the woman, handed her a juice and a bun, and said, "This is for your son. What's his name? Why does he sleep all the time? Can I give it to him myself? He must be hungry, right?" The beggar pretended not to hear, lowered her eyes, and wrapped herself in the collar of her worn jacket. The girl repeated the question. "Why is he sleeping all the time? Is the boy sick? Should we take him to a doctor?" The woman looked up again, her eyes tired with irritation mixed with indifference and aloofness. It was not a mother's look. She whispered with one lip, "Go where you're going." The girl was shaken up. She was already out of her mind and almost screamed. "Why is he sleeping, I ask you?" Jenna tried to take the baby by the hand and turn him to face her. But the gypsy suddenly jumped up sharply from the carton and shouted in her own language, rudely pushing our heroine away. Some kindly passerby, an elderly man, threw some money into the glass and reproachfully began to reprimand Jenna. "Why are you shouting? Wake the baby up. He's probably exhausted enough and fell asleep. You see, she's not sitting here for the good life. Here, daughter, take some." The beggar immediately crossed herself with a look of universal humility and sorrow on her face. Immediately, two tough young men ran up to Jenna and started pushing her away from the beggar. "So, let's be nice and get out of here, or you'll miss your teeth. Didn't they tell you to go your own way, or do you need a better explanation?" And a small knife flashed in his hand. A frightened Jenna just nodded and ran away, glad to have gotten away and realized the most important thing. The baby really is being slipped something in, and he obviously wasn't this woman's son. So it was a whole scheme, a criminal business. The girl was not going to back down. She decided to save the child from the clutches of these mercenary crooks, who did not care about him at all, as long as money was thrown by passers-by. Jenna pulled herself together and went to the police station instead of going home. Emotional, she began to explain to the officer on duty at the window what had happened. "You understand. That baby in the beggar's arms, he sleeps all the time. Why? Because he's not a baby. He looks about 3 years old. Such a big baby can't sleep for 24 hours. So they're giving him something to drink. I'm ready to report it. We must save the baby. He's obviously in danger. I beg you, check her documents." But to her indignation, neither the officer on duty nor the policemen who were nearby and were talking about something, when they heard what it was about, were not even going to take any statements from her. Moreover, they made a mockery of her. "Listen, citizen, what's your name?" "Jenna. Go home and don't mess with our heads here." "What gypsy? What child? How do I know if it's her son or not, and why he's sleeping? And how long do kids even sleep? I don't have any. Do I have to chase after every beggar? There's nothing else for us to do. We're up to our eyeballs in this mess. Do you want more than anyone else, or don't you have anything better to do? All these people come around, taking up our time. If it were true, what happened, or if someone got beaten up or robbed?" Jenna just waved her hand. "It's clear nobody cares about the common people. It's the same as always." In the evening, scrolling through social networks, she suddenly came across the page of a volunteer who was searching for people on his own. He was posting photos and pleas of parents who were unsuccessfully searching for their loved ones, including their children. Jenna gathered her courage and wrote him the way she did. She hadn't expected the answer to come so quickly, but to her surprise, Max, that was the man's name, responded instantly, listened again, and offered to join her. Looking through such ads, hoping to find a similar one, to look for a boy of 3. He, for his part, also promised to help, so they started doing it. Posted everywhere post Jenna that in the crossing of the gypsy begging with a sleeping baby boy, but he was clearly not her, and the request to respond to those who are looking for a similar aged child in their area. It's been a week. In the evenings, Jenna's eyes were watering from the thousands of help posts she'd seen, and it seemed like she would never find what she needed in that whirlwind. Then suddenly, over the weekend, a man wrote to her. He was just begging for his phone number to call her. And soon he called. "Girl, honey, I came across your post. My name is Jacob. I'm a businessman. My son went missing 6 months ago, just 3 years old. He was stolen from under my ex-wife's nose. And that's it. He just vanished into thin air. Believe me, I had all sorts of connections. Would you mind sending me a picture of that kid you saw? Maybe I'll recognize him as my son. Even if it's a long shot, it's a long shot." Jenna grinned. "How am I going to get a picture? I only tried to get closer and take the boy's hand. But I was nearly beaten by the bouncers who were hanging around. All I remembered was that he had curly blonde hair that fell out from under his cap, and a prominent mole on the back of his neck, closer to the back of his head, in the shape of a seashell." The man's voice almost broke into a scream. "Oh my God, it's Alex. That's my son. That's my son. My son has that exact mole. I'll be there in an hour. I'm on my way. I need your address. You'll show me where you saw the gypsy girl." Indeed, less than an hour later, there was a persistent knock on the door of Jenna's room. She opened the door and saw a pleasant man in his 30s, wearing an expensive cashmere coat and crocodile leather boots. He rubbed his briefcase nervously in his hands and got right to the point. "Good evening. Are you Jenna? And I'm the Jacob we called the other day. Please, let's not waste any more time talking. Let's go. I've already called the police and backup. They'll be there soon. We don't have a minute to lose." Jenna was surprised. "Are you that determined? And if it turns out to not be your son, what then?" The man answered quietly. "Then I'll just save someone else's child from the clutches of criminals. You're the one who rescued him, aren't you? He's nobody to you, is he? You just took pity on the child, didn't you?" So they got into the man's expensive Jeep and raced to that very crossing. Jenna went down there alone first. There it was, the gypsy and the boy in the same spot. Then the girl went back down and nodded to the man. He gave the police the signal, and they rushed downstairs and surrounded the woman on all sides. The bouncers Jenna had described were also rounded up, though they scurried away, seeing that it was a tight mess. Jacob snatched the baby out of the gypsy's hands and immediately wept, holding it tightly to him. "Son, Alex, found him. Bastard, tell me, what did you give him? Why is he sleeping? I'll put you all in jail for a long time." Jenna was not confused and shouted at him. "Jacob, hurry up and go to the hospital. We need to understand what's wrong with your son and how serious his condition is. You can see that he doesn't open his eyes or react to anything." The man put his son in Jenna's arms, and they raced like the wind to the children's hospital. On the way, she stroked the baby's skinny, translucent cheeks, listened to his faint breathing, and whispered, "Have patience, my dear, just a little while longer. The doctors will help you, and you will get better. You'll meet your daddy, and everything will be all right." Jacob only whispered softly, "Jenna, honey, thank you. I am forever in your debt. You have no idea what I went through when my son went missing. I didn't want to live. I wish he'd live. That's all I'm praying for. I wish my son would get well. Why doesn't he react to anything at all?" At the hospital, the baby was taken away and immediately sent to the intensive care unit. The baby's condition was critical. The doctors convened a concilium and conferred for a long time. Jacob was pacing the hospital corridor like a tiger in a cage. He was clutching his head and greedily drinking water from the cooler, whispering something under his breath. Jenna sat quietly on the couch and prayed that the baby would get better. He felt equally sorry for both father and son. Both had suffered. Finally, an elderly gray-haired doctor with glasses came out to them. He looked serious and anxious. Jacob immediately ran up to him and asked in a frantic voice, "How is Alex? Is he going to live?" What did those monsters do to him? Why is he asleep and unresponsive? The doctor took off his cap and sat down next to him on the couch. You see, the situation is very serious. Your son was heavily sedated for a long time and not fed at all. That's why his body was exhausted and he was on the verge of life and death. You could say you saved him at the last minute. Now he is on intensive therapy. He is severely underweight and malnourished. We give him medications to purify the blood and vitamins. We hope that little by little he will make it. But I want to tell you right away, it is not a quick process. We don't know how his brain and other organs are affected. Jacob clenched his fists, literally shaking. Such bastards. Nothing sacred. Stealing the baby to slowly kill it and make money off of it. It's unbelievable. And all this is happening under the noses of the police. And nobody cares. I'll buy the best medicine I can. You name it. I'll do anything to make my son get better. The doctor replied. You're lucky, you might say. Usually such children are kept on alcohol or something worse, and they can die at any moment. We've dealt with that before. So sleeping pills are a gentle option. And the fact that this is a black business has been written about for a long time. Sincere people throw money around, hoping that it will go to the beggars or their unfortunate children. But it didn't turn out that way. The lion's share of the money is taken away, leaving only change for a bun and tea. Not only that, but most of the time the police are behind it, pretending they don't know anything about it. I'll write you a list of medications, but you can't go to Alex yet. He's in intensive care. Come back tomorrow. Impressed by the doctor's story, Jacob dropped to his knees right in the middle of the hall and wrapped his arms around Jenna's legs, muttering, "Thank you, you are a guardian angel. If it were not for your responsive heart, it is likely that Alex would soon be gone." How frightening. Just thinking about it makes me sick inside. Ask me anything, I will fulfill your every wish. The girl became uncomfortable and began to lift the man up and whisper, "Come on, Jacob, get up. I don't want anything. I only did it because I felt sorry for the baby, not for profit. Let's go to a cafe nearby, and we'll talk about everything calmly." The whole staff is already staring at us. They sat down at a table in a coffee shop, ordered coffee, and Jenna asked, "Jacob, tell me, how did it happen that your son was stolen in the first place? It seems to me something unbelievable nowadays." The man sighed and began the story. "I had a bad marriage when I was young, and all my troubles came from that. Inga was very windy and reckless. While we were dating, I was head over heels in love, and I even liked that about her. She dressed brightly, looked amazing, experimented boldly in everything. But when I got married, I realized she was a lousy spouse. She pissed off all the household chores. Inga preferred, as before, to run to clubs and lead a wild lifestyle. I gave almost all my time to work, got very tired. I wanted, on the contrary, home warmth, understanding, and comfort. But every night I found only a mountain of unwashed dishes and a whining Inga. I told her 100 times to do something, to find something to do that would keep her busy. When she became pregnant, I was over the moon. I thought, well, now my wife will settle down, wake up in her maternal feelings, and our family will finally get peace and quiet. But it wasn't. After giving birth to Alex, Inga immediately went back to her old ways. Boutiques, salons, glamorous parties. She purposely did not breastfeed, even though she had plenty of milk, so as not to spoil her form. She had to buy formula. It's unbelievable. She didn't take care of the baby at all. I had to hire a nanny. She was more help than my mother. My wife was psychotic and hysterical at night and didn't want to get up to the baby. I always did that. Alex was reaching out to me. Feeling that I loved him very much, I tried to spend all my time with my son. I wish I had more. I couldn't understand how a mother could not love her child and be so neglectful of him. We fought more and more often. Scandals were constant in our family. And then, on that fateful day, The nanny, as if on bad luck, got sick and asked for time off. Inga was forced to go for a walk with her son by herself. The child was playing on the playground, and this hen was just chatting with her endless friends on the phone and did not care about the child. She didn't even realize right away that strangers were taking him away, luring him away with a kitten. She did not even remember the signs of the kidnappers. She called me and started hysterically screaming that Alex was stolen. That's how I lost my son. I called the police, private detectives, searched all the yards, back alleys, morgues, and hospitals. But Alex seemed to have vanished into thin air. No leads, no trace. After what happened, I literally hated Inga. She became disgusting to me. And we got divorced. I went to work, but every day and night I prayed to God that a miracle happened and my son was found. Although the police wouldn't give me a chance, they said too much time had passed, and for sure the boy was no longer alive. But I stubbornly didn't want to believe it. I waited and hoped. A miracle finally happened, and the magician was you, Jenna. Thank you again. I'm ready to say it 1,000,000 times. Now it's your turn. Tell us about yourself. I noticed that you live alone. Why is that? Still haven't met your love. You're such a young and pretty girl. Jenna became sad and narrated her life. What's there to tell? My father died in front of my eyes when I was only 7 years old. We were going to the sea together then, got into a terrible traffic accident, and since then I have this ugly scar on my face. Then there was an orphanage. I don't want to talk about it at all. It was the worst place in the world. I went swimming, I won prizes, I got plenty of literary awards. But what was the use? Who was going to let an orphan with a scar into the national team? They turned me down. I work as a manager in a small firm. I almost got married, but it didn't work out here either. My fiancé left me, found an older rich woman, said he didn't want a poor orphan and with a defect. That's how I live, all alone in this world. Things aren't working out for me. I don't know why. I hate my face. Everyone's staring. And when I ask them something, they look away. I don't care if I have to go to ground. Jacob, can I come to Alex's hospital tomorrow too? Check on him. I'm so worried about him. You can't imagine. The man suddenly took the girl by the hand and said, "Why don't we talk to each other? What are we yelling at each other?" Jenna, I don't mind at all. I'm even glad if you visit Alex. In fact, let's communicate. Let's be friends, shall we? We're not strangers now, are we? Listen to what I have to say. Believe me, I've met a lot of glamorous beauties in my life, without a single flaw, but they can't compare with you. You have a kind of natural, inner beauty that beckons and attracts. I don't flatter you. I mean that sincerely. Let me give you a ride home, and we'll meet tomorrow for sure. Okay. Jenna blushed. She was very pleased with Jacob's warm and sincere words, and she liked the man a lot. When he took her hand, it was like a fire inside her. She wanted him to hold her like that, not to let her go. All the next day, Jenna could hardly concentrate on her work. All her thoughts were on Sergei and Alex. Immediately after work, she rushed home and prepared a hot, fresh meal and drove to the hospital to see the boy. Alex got better and was transferred to a private room. Jacob was already there. The boy looked very pale and gaunt. He was looking around frightened, as if he didn't quite know where he was, and he was holding his father's hand tightly, smiling weakly at him. The man said something tenderly to him, stroked his curly hair, and he was happy. Jenna walked quietly into the room. The boy looked at her surprised and blinked his open blue eyes. She winked at him and said, "Hello, Alex. How are you, sweetie? Come to your senses a little bit. Look what I brought you. A real robot transformer, just like in the cartoon. Here you go." The boy immediately smiled, eagerly took the toy, and babbled quietly. "Thank you. You're good. What's your name?" Jacob answered for her. "Son, this is the same Aunt Jenna. She saved you from those evil uncles, and she made sure we got together. Then he turned to the girl. Jenna, I bought Alex some new pajamas, but he's so grimy. It's like he hasn't been bathed in 6 months. It's like a nightmare. Can you help me with this? The doctor won't let us go home. He says we have to do more IVs and monitor his condition. Get a robe and a towel in the bag, and I'll take Alex. And he turned to his son. Well, soldier, let's go wash up, shall we? You look like a chimney sweep to me. The man picked up his son in his arms, and the three of them went into the shower room. After the bath, the boy was unrecognizable. His cheeks were finally a little pinker, and he looked so cute, just like an angel. Jenna started to get food out of the bag. She chirped. That's right. Now, after the shower, we have to eat something. The baby's glowing, just bones. Alex immediately grimaced. I don't want to eat. If there's porridge in there, I won't eat it. I don't like porridge. He whimpered. It's not porridge. I ran home and managed to make mashed potatoes and a cutlet. Just try it. How good is it? With tomato. Come on. A spoonful for Daddy. And another one. What about me? I tried, didn't I? That's a good boy. And look, how can a robot shoot? Come on, Dad, can you show us? We'll have another spoonful. So with a little coaxing and joking, Jenna easily fed the baby, and he didn't even notice how he ate it all. Jacob was amazed, watching this fascinating process. He began to praise the girl. Bravo, Jenna. I'm ready for a standing ovation. Where did you learn to be so deft with the little ones? Feeding my son has always been a problem. This little guy always refused normal food and demanded mountains of candy. Jenna only shrugged her shoulders. I don't know. At the orphanage, I sometimes like to take care of the little ones, but there really, you didn't have to talk them into eating. Everything was swallowed up to the last crumb. I'm just really worried about Alex, and I want him to get stronger and gain strength quickly. From that day on, Jacob and Jenna began to talk a lot. She often visited them and Alex, and on weekends she could take the baby with her for the day if Jacob was busy at work. She and Alex were very easy. They got along wonderfully, and the baby, to her surprise, never once asked about his mother. One day she ventured out and broached the difficult subject with Jacob. Did you tell Inge that you found your son? She must have been happy. Doesn't she want to see her son? To hold him? To live with him? I'm sorry to ask you this, but it's so strange to me, and Alex has never asked about her. I don't understand. Jacob immediately became sad and answered, Yes, you're right. It's not that weird. It's wild. Of course, I called and told Inga the news. What am I? Some kind of animal. A mother, after all. We hadn't seen each other since the divorce. I thought she'd be happy and she'd come running to her son. But no. Turns out Inga went to Bali with a young boyfriend. She said she was very happy, but said she wasn't going to come back yet, and Alex didn't fit into her plans for the future. Can you imagine that? Her own son not fitting into his mother's plans. It made my hair stand on end. I told her I was going to sue her for termination of maternity rights, and my son would stay with me. But she wasn't too upset about that either. She just blurted out, Do as you please. That's it. Ciao. I have a massage in 10 minutes. And Alex, my son never felt the payoff from her, the warmth, the affection. That's why he doesn't remember her. After all, to be honest, he spent his 3 years of life mostly with me and the nanny, not with his own mother. She always had no time for her son. That's the way it is, Jenna. And your son immediately reached out to you. And you, I see, he really liked it. And I'm very happy about that. The girl answered sincerely. You know, I really loved Alex like a son. Such a wonderful boy. Of course, it's still hard for him to adjust to normal life after being pilled with pills for so long. But I try to read him fairy tales. We are adding cubes and learning letters little by little. I think if we do everything with him all the time, everything will get better. Jacob suddenly looked at her in a very special way and said without taking his eyes off her, "I like you a lot, Jenna. I've never met anyone like you before. You're real. Can I kiss you?" He pulled her to him and kissed her softly. Jenna's eyes were blurry, and the earth was gone from under her feet. Jacob didn't take her home that night, so they began to live together. Surprisingly, the three of them were at once so easy and comfortable, as if they had already lived half their lives together. Meanwhile, Jacob and his father, the well-known businessman Korolev, were making such a fuss that the police had to move fast. The best investigator, Michael, was assigned to investigate the case. He organized raids and raids, pinned to the wall the very bouncers who threatened Jenna, and uncovered a whole criminal scheme. Turns out it was a business of enormous proportions, involving officials and the police. Many beggars were sleeping and living in the filthy garage, right on bare mattresses. These were either invalids or women with children who had been stolen, who were more likely to be served. They were mercilessly exploited, taking all their money. The poor people worked literally for a piece of bread. And that was it. At the same time, it was simply impossible to escape, and such desperados were beaten to death. What was there to be afraid of? They were homeless. No one would miss them or look for them. As a result, a lot of the heads who were sitting in the warm seats controlling this bloody black business got blown off. They didn't even care about the children, whether they died or survived. The main thing was that the child should sleep quietly and not interfere with work. But now all the perpetrators got what they deserved. Jacob personally made sure of that. Jacob was determined, so as soon as he and his bride started living together, he told her the first weekend, "Come on, Jenna. We're going to my parents' house to get acquainted. There's salmon, oysters, and lots of other delicacies on the program. My mom's a real show-off, so don't be surprised." The girl was really frightened. "Jacob, maybe we shouldn't. I don't like these things. And that scar, I'm terribly embarrassed. God forbid they make fun of me. They'll say you've got yourself a poor woman, and I can't even eat oysters. I'm afraid." But the man hugged her, kissed her, and began to soothe her. "What are you getting yourself worked up about? Everything will be fine. You'll see. Well, you have to meet your mother-in-law, don't you? Mind you, I'm going to marry you. You're mine alone. And I don't want anyone else. No matter how beautiful she is 100 times. So I won't take any objections. Run along and get ready. We've got to get Alex dressed. And that's the test of strength." Jenna was very excited. She put on her best chiffon dress with an elegant belt. She let her hair down and tried to cover the hateful scar with her long bangs, and her beautiful emerald Jacob eyes completed the look. They matched her green eyes and seemed to distract attention from the mutilation a little. Jacob whistled when he saw her. He began to compliment her. "Wow, you look even prettier now. That dress looks great on you. Well, son, how beautiful is our Jenna?" Alex gave a thumbs up and showed class. Jenna calmed down a bit, and they drove to Jacob's parents' house. They hugged and kissed Jacob and their grandson with great joy. But they greeted Jenna with obvious coolness. The man hugged her right away, though, and introduced her to her parents. "Mom, Dad, meet my fiancée, Jenna. She is the one who saved our Alex from those horrible people. She literally worked a miracle, and I got to meet my son again. Please love and welcome." Her father, Frank, shook her hand and said, "It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for saving my grandson. That's very noble of you." My mother, Kelly, merely pursed her lips and said a dry hello. Jenna was immediately uncomfortable. From the first minutes she'd been in the house, everyone went into the living room. There was a fancy table, and next to each plate was a pile of cutlery, half of which Jenna had never even seen before. Everyone was seated, and the dinner party began, more like torture. Jacob's parents were all focused on her. The only questions that came out were, "Who are your parents? What school did you go to? Where do you work? Where do you live? What education? Where have you been abroad? What was your favorite country? And so on. When Jenna honestly answered that she was an orphan and was brought up in an orphanage, an unpleasant grimace immediately distorted Frank's face, and the fact that she lived in an ordinary dorm room, and at all, shocked the parents of the groom. Kelly was teasing her in a subtle way. Jenna, pass the lobster tongues. No, they're not. Why don't you eat almost anything? Or don't you like our treats? I don't think they serve this kind of delicacy in your dorm. Jenna was blushing and ready to fall to the ground. She wanted to get up and run away. But Jacob was sitting beside her, looking at her encouragingly, trying to make jokes, trying to change the subject. But to be honest, not very well. The situation was getting more and more heated. Suddenly Alex, who at the time was exploring the huge remote-controlled car his grandfather had given him, got off it unluckily and fell to the floor and cried heavily. Jacob jerked to run to his son, but Jenna beat him to it and instinctively rushed to the baby to comfort him. On the way, she awkwardly pushed back a chair, and it fell with a crash. Kelly grimaced. What manners? Like an elephant in a china shop. Jacob, while your Jenna's away, let's talk. Are you out of your mind? You got one better than the other. The first one was a chicken with no brains, and now you picked up an orphan with a handicap. What do you need her for? Jacob was extremely indignant. How can you? I love Jenna and she loves me. And Alex doesn't give a shit about her. If it wasn't for her, my son wouldn't even be alive. You're out of your mind to say such horrible things. My father joined the conversation. Jacob, think about it. She's from an orphanage. Do you know what kind of kids go there? I bet she comes from a broken home. And that scar, where did she get it? She probably got it from her alcoholic parents too, right? So why do you need such a bride? We've already got an ambassador's daughter for you. Why don't you stop messing around with the marginalized and think about our family's reputation? In the heat of the argument, no one noticed that Jenna had been standing behind their backs, hearing everything. Her tears were choking her, and her anger was bubbling up inside. She frantically rummaged in her purse and pulled out her father's order of courage, tossing it right in Frank's face with the words, "How dare you judge a man without knowing anything about him? Who gave you the right? My parents aren't alcoholics at all. My father saved 15 people in an accident when the bus overturned and caught fire. And he died like a hero. They gave him a posthumous medal. And they sent me to an orphanage. I was only 7 years old at the time. I got that scar on my face from there. It burned me. Do you know what it's like to live in an orphanage after a family and a home? You didn't like me. Then I'll leave. But I won't stand for this kind of humiliation. You can't measure everything in life by money. There are still feelings, but you probably don't understand that." She abruptly turned around and was about to leave, holding back her sobs, when suddenly Frank called out to her. "Jenna, wait." "Wait." Was the father's name Kevin? "That's right, but what do you care? It can't be." Oh my God. He was the one who got Kelly and Jacob off that ill-fated bus. They were going to the sea that day too. I took them there myself. Your father broke the glass with his feet, put his jacket on Jacob, and dragged him out to avoid being cut by shrapnel, and then came back for Luba. I still admire his courage and bravery, and I am indebted to him, as I too could have lost both my wife and son forever. The man suddenly got down on his knees and started begging. "Forgive us, girl. Forgive us for everything. We are eternally indebted to your father too. And I heard that the hero died and was awarded posthumously, but I didn't know if he had any children or relatives. Now I am indebted to you too. That's who you are, so brave and determined, kind and sympathetic. Don't go away. Please do. I'll make it up to you. I promise." Kelly's eyes moistened. The memories must have come flooding back, and she walked over to the girl and gave her a heartfelt hug. "I'm sorry, Jenna. It was me. I started a scandal. I made everybody mad. I hurt you for nothing. The hell with it. The ambassador's daughter. I promise I'll be a better mother-in-law, and no more mockery. So, peace. Jenna, too, cried out in an overdrive of emotion and shook her head. Peace. I really love Jacob and Alex, and I can't imagine my life without them anymore. And I'm happy to have them in my life. Now they're my meaning, my motivation. Do you think I like to walk like a freak? Yes, ever since I was a child. I hate this damn scar. But how many times I have not applied to the hospital. The doctors only shrug their shoulders, saying that it's too big and deep. There's nothing you can do about it. They are afraid of hitting the facial nerve. Then they say, it can paralyze my face. Frank cheered her up. I can't promise anything yet, but I will try to help. I have an acquaintance in the northern capital, a master of his craft, a plastic surgeon from God. Let's go to him for a consultation. Maybe he'll come up with something. The rest of the evening went great. Kelly taught Jenna to eat those lobsters and oysters with laughter and jokes. She laughed and recalled incidents from her life. The first time they gave me an oyster to try at a dinner party, I was horrified. My mouth was full, my eyes rolled open. It was disgusting. I felt sick, and I cannot spit it out. I barely made it to the bathroom. Only much later I learned how to cook and eat them properly. Jacob laughed and hugged his bride and added, I can't stand them at all. They're so slippery and disgusting. I think the roast Jenna makes in the oven is 100 times better. She's such a good girl. And the way she talks Alex into it, it's just a talent. He now eats like a soldier, anything put on his plate. The girl blushed and huddled closer to Jacob. She was insanely pleased with his warm words, and most importantly, his support. After all, he, like a lion, had rushed to defend her from her parents' attacks and had sided with her, even in spite of them. And that was worth a lot. They returned home late at night. Alex fell asleep in Jenna's arms in the car. He sniffled so sweetly, hugging her, warming her with his warmth. And everything inside was singing with love for this small and so defenseless little man. A week later, Frank kept his word, got all the doctors on their feet, and brought Jenna in for a consultation with a plastic surgeon. Charles was a true virtuoso in his field. The most famous stars and public figures went to him in the pursuit of beauty. Jenna drove without much hope of a miracle, because she had already been told repeatedly that it was impossible to fix the defect. But the doctor examined her for a surprisingly long and fastidious time and gave his verdict. What can I say? The burn, of course, is very deep, but it can be repaired. It won't be cheap, and it will require several surgeries, probably 3, maybe 4. And that's anesthesia, pain, and a long healing time. Are you ready to endure all that? Frank fussed. Don't worry about payment. I'll take care of everything. Well, what about you, Jenna? Will you make that kind of sacrifice? It's not a month to go to clinics with bandages on your face. Or would you say no? Jacob loves you, and so do we. The girl was quiet, weighed everything, and answered, I'll take it all. I promise I won't cry once. It's been my dream since I was a little girl to get rid of that ugly scar. I have endured so much mockery, so much ridicule because of it, not to count. So I agree. I cannot even believe that I can get rid of it. But it was easier said than done. Jenna had no idea, when she agreed, what a hell of a pain it was. When the anesthesia wore off, how uncomfortable it was to walk around with a bandaged face and endure injections and bandages. I had to quit my job. When, after the first and most difficult surgery, it was time to remove the bandages, she was just shaking. She was panically afraid to look in the mirror and asked the nurse everything. How is it out there? Is it a little better? Or is it worse? I'm so scared. What if my face is even more twisted? She calmed her down, smiled, and handed her the mirror. Jenna was overjoyed to see that the scar had shrunk and smoothed out, and the skin was no longer tight. With each surgery, the girl's face transformed, and after the third and final one, she was a beauty. Jacob watched and admired. He was terribly proud of his bride, supported her in everything, helped her through her pain and fear. In the meantime, Jenna had graduated from university by correspondence, but her degree was never useful. Her fiancé realized her long-held dream and got her a job at the swimming club as an instructor. The girl was just happy because it was her true calling. She enjoyed swimming and teaching others to swim. The more so because Jenna was good at finding an approach to children, and they loved her wholeheartedly. In addition, the work took only a few hours a day, and the rest of the time the girl gave Alex. She took great pleasure in working with him, and of course she did not forget about Jacob. Their nights were still unforgettable. 6 months later, the couple decided to have a big wedding. Jenna was reluctant at first. She didn't like publicity, but Kelly talked her into it. Jenna, a wedding is such a momentous occasion. It should be at least once in every girl's life. After all, no matter what happens next, it's the wedding that comes to mind as the most touching moment. And then I want everyone around me to be jealous of what a beautiful woman my son will marry. One can only dream of a daughter-in-law like you. Jenna was radiant on the day of the gala. She looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe her eyes. Gorgeous hair, delicate white dress, tiara, and no scar. Only soft, supple skin. It seemed all her dreams had come true at once. There were many guests, photographers, and the press at the fancy restaurant. It's no joke, the son of Korolev himself is getting married for the second time. And the bride, just a looker. You couldn't take your eyes off her. In the midst of the celebration, Alex took a microphone in his hands and decided to congratulate his parents too. The boy, trying not to curtsy, said loudly and seriously, "Jenna's mom, congratulations. I wish you happiness with your daddy. You live together as a family. Give birth to a baby brother soon." From such a touching poem, and from the fact that Alex himself called her mom, Jenna could not stand it and cried. She jumped up to the baby, took him in her arms, hugged him and said, "Thank you, my good man. My son, I love you so much, and I won't give you up to anyone." The guests applauded for a long time, and many in the audience also shed tears as they watched this touching picture. Jenna had no idea that the surprise was almost ruined. The guards noticed in time that a drunken Inga was trying to sneak through the kitchen. After hearing over the phone from acquaintances that her ex was remarrying the young hottie, she went berserk for some reason. Immediately, she remembered her son and decided to take him away. To be bold and uninhibited, she decided to drink cognac, but she overdid it, so the spectacle was not for the faint of heart. Inga rushed into the hall, barely standing on her feet. The makeup on her face smeared, and the heel of her expensive shoes broke off as she fought with a security guard. The woman shouted out, "What? You bastard, you want to get married? Did you find a young girl? He's my son, not hers. I'm the mother, and I'll take him. You know it." Jacob ran to the noise. Seeing her in such an unsightly state made him shudder. After her tirade, he threw angrily, "Zakhar, take this woman to the hotel and make sure she doesn't cause us any more trouble. I never want to see her again." Then he grabbed her by the scruff of her coat, shook her, and said stiffly, "What kind of mother are you? You're a cuckoo and you're a whore. Get out of my life. I revoked your maternity rights, and you have no right to see Alex. And if you bother me, I'll make you pay alimony until your son turns 18. Get out." The guard firmly took her under his arms and dragged her to the car. She was hysterical for a long time, drinking cognac straight from her throat and behaving ugly. And then she just collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep, just like she was in her coat. In the morning, she was awakened by a persistent knock on the door. The woman could barely get her head off the pillow. It was humming like a bell, her mouth was dry, and her whole body was aching. She waddled reluctantly to open the door. On the threshold stood a menacing-looking Frank. He squeamishly looked at the not yet fully sober woman, put some papers on the bedside table. Then, in an icy voice, he said, "All right, sweetheart. Here's your plane ticket and a lot of money. Your flight's in an hour. Get ready and hurry up. Why did you come here? Your son divorced a long time ago. You never loved him, and you know it. You're no wife. You're even worse as a mother. You never took care of Alex. All you had on your mind were lovers and resorts with young lovers. Why do you want to see Alex? What are you going to tell them? The boy has just found a real loving family. Jenna loves him sincerely, and he is her, you know, not you. So you take him away, let's say, and what? You will not be able to devote all your time to him. You will quickly play at being a mother's daughter. And then what? The boy will suffer again. No way. You had a family, but you gave it up for fun. I will not let you ruin my son's life again. I'm warning you, if you ever set foot in this town again, you're on your own head. I'll make your life a living hell. You know me. Cab's downstairs. There's a guard at the door. Time's up. Get ready. The woman wrapped her arms around her head and shouted in anger. But I gave birth to Alex, which means I'm a mother. Frank shook his head. You're wrong. A mother is not the one who gave birth, but the one who loves her child, puts her heart and soul into it, and devotes her life to it. Remember that. All the best. And the man walked away, honking his step like in the army. And Inga fell back on her pillow and roared with helplessness and anger. She was angry. Damn, he's right about everything. Why, stupid, I did not live quietly. And now what? It's 30 and I'm alone. So tired of these resorts and young boys, replacing each other. All this, it turns out, such a tinsel, and there is no happiness, one plop. And Jacob and Jenna began a quiet and peaceful family life, without passion or scandal, but with warmth and caring for each other. They often went to the amusement park together on weekends and had lots of fun with Alex. They ate huge cotton candy and rode merry-go-rounds, just like when they were children, and they were absolutely happy. One day, the newlyweds decided to order pizza at home, decided to watch an interesting comedy and not go anywhere. The doorbell rang. Jenna called out, "It's the courier. I guess I'll get it, honey." On the doorstep of the posh apartment stood William. He didn't look very fresh, to tell you the truth, his cap pulled down over his eyes. When he saw the blooming Jenna, so beautiful, in an expensive silk robe, and without a single flaw on her face, he was speechless and mumbled, "Hello, did you order delivery?" "Whoa, Jenna, is that you? Wow, you look great. Do you live here? Are you married?" "Cindy dumped me. You know, she played around and dumped me, the viper. She threw me out on the street without a penny, like a mangy puppy. Now I'm working as a courier again. Can't we meet like we used to?" Jacob went out to see what was taking Jenna so long and asked in surprise, "Lovely, where did you get stuck? What took you so long? Is everything all right?" Jenna kissed him on the cheek and replied, "Yes, honey, it's okay." The courier was sloppy. He almost got the order mixed up. She took the order, signed the slip, and slammed the door in William's face. And he stood there with his mouth open, biting his elbows that he had lost such a beautiful and clever woman in pursuit of money.